Hello and welcome back to Tinker Talks Guns. Today we're going to be talking about what may be the most unique compensator for a handgun that I have seen. The Strikeforce Mass Driver. Now, a compensator is a device on the end of the muzzle of a gun that typically redirects some or all of the muzzle blast upwards, which reduces muzzle rise. And these came into vogue in the 1980s for competition handguns, for things like IPSC, where the goal was to shoot as rapidly and accurately as possible, and they found that compensators allowed them to do this. They work. They allow you to shoot more rapidly with greater accuracy. Now, that only helps if you already know how to shoot rapidly and accurately. What we have here is a way of refining existing skill, not a way of replacing skill. Compensators can be large, compensators can be small. This is a mini compensator I made, mounted on a PSA Dagger Compact that I use for testing things like optics and such. And it has just in front of the barrel, there is a chamber larger than bore diameter. So when the bullet exits the barrel, it mostly plugs the hole in the end, and the gas, because it's expanding, increases velocity, and a portion of it is jetted out the top of the gun. And that reduces muzzle flip. Now, it only reduces it optimally by about 20, maybe 30% in a really good, well set up compensator. This one is rather less than that because it's a mini comp. Now, larger compensators, they add weight at the end of the gun, weight that does not move as much as the slide. And that helps because the stationary weight out there helps reduce the muzzle rise. When it's also got the expansion chamber and ports, some of them have as many as 3 expansion chambers and ports, more and more of the muzzle gas is directed upwards and they become proportionally more effective. Now, where you see this in competition is in shorter split times between shots, which results in a small increment of improvement in overall speed and greater accuracy because the muzzle comes on target faster. Now, this is not an enormous difference. We're not talking about a deal breaker here until you get to the point where split seconds matter. So they're very good for certain types of competition. But they're not, generally speaking, a real benefit to most people. A lot of people who buy compensators because it looks cool and it's a way of tarting up their Glock or Glock clone or whatever. But they do have benefits for good shooters. And these are benefits, but as I say, these are benefits that you will never realize unless you are shooting rapidly and trying for accuracy. So a muzzle weight with a port that redirects some of the muzzle blast upwards, that's a normal compensator. The Strikeforce Mass Driver is not a normal compensator. Yes, it does redirect some muzzle blast upwards and some out to the sides, but it's not that simple because it's not attached to the barrel. I don't know if you can see it, but the compensator does not move up like that when the barrel does. You can see the barrel goes up, compensator doesn't, because it's not attached to the barrel. And what these ports do, and the muzzle blast, is push the compensator forward against spring pressure, which is a pretty novel approach. When the slide is going one way, you now have a counterweight moving the other direction, which theoretically will take some of the recoil impulse the felt recoil impulse. In absolute terms, the recoil impulse never changes. It's just how much of it is transmitted to the user. And that's an interesting theory, and it's something I had never seen before. Now, before we get too far into the weeds, I'd like to thank my supporters on Patreon. It's very much a shoestring operation, and your contributions help more than you know. I'd also like to thank Channel Benefactors, those individuals and business who have contributed to the channel in innumerable ways, not the least of which is CJ, who contributed this, the Strikeforce Compensator. And they're not the most expensive thing in the world, but the price is not trivial either, at least for most of us. So the question is, does it work? Now, to shoot it, obviously, the best possible way to do it would be to have an identical slide set up with a standard length barrel mounted on the same frame and shoot them both side by side. We couldn't get quite that close because I do not have unlimited resources. However, what we do have is a PSA dagger slide with the mini comp, and it has an optic. I do have a slide with iron sights and no compensator, not even a mini compensator, but it doesn't have a red dot, and red dots do allow you to shoot more rapidly and accurately. So I figured we're not going to get a perfect apples to apples comparison, but this was as close as I could get because they both have red dots, so there's no real advantage there. This has a mini compensator, which is only just effective enough to bother, really. So that was the best I could do. So let's go to the range footage and see how that worked out.
I'll get the other side.
Don't forget to show on the camera the comp.
Don't worry about it. We know.
Okay.
That is kind of great. And now the math driver.
driver was a major improvement.
I would say that too.
I was firing faster and I was getting a tighter group.
Yeah. Okay, 10-yard double taps, which I have never done with this gun before.
Okay, I don't care who that is. That was a really bad day.
That's a few flyers, but damn. So as you saw at first, shooting the two setups side by side, we didn't really notice that much difference. But when we sped things up, the difference became obvious and immediate. And this works. It works well. In the last segment, as I said, I have never double tapped with this gun at 10 yards because I just didn't figure I would keep the groups tight enough. With this, first time out of the box, returned a pretty good result. Yes, there were a few flyers, but it was the first time even trying shooting this gun at 10 yards with or without the compensator. So it makes a real difference. Now, in a real world shooting on the street, is that going to make was that difference enough to be genuinely significant? You can argue it either way. A tighter group, well centered, means you're more likely to break something that the bad guy can't do without. But I'm not sure it's necessary. Where it is necessary is in competition, like IDPA, IPSC, Action Shooting International, where time and accuracy are both a factor. And at 10 yards, with a little practice, this would very easily make the difference between an A-zone hit and a C-zone hit on the second shot of a double tap. And that could be the difference between winning or losing a stage, or even the match. So, if you're going to shoot action shooting competition, this could very much be worth investing in. And it's not that expensive. But for general carry, there are issues, and we'll get back to those. But for now, let's go to the tabletop and have a closer look at this thing. So first things first, let's talk about length. This is a Dagger Compact from PSA. It's the size of a Glock 19. This adds 1 3/4 inches to the length, which means if you want a holster for it, a Glock 19 holster ain't going to do it. A Glock 17 holster ain't going to do it. You're going to have to go for one of the long slide Glock holsters for that to work out for you. Again, if you're shooting competition, that's not a problem. And it does not necessarily lend itself well to concealed carry. Now, the mini comp is less of an issue because it can just stick out the end of the holster and it's not really going to hurt anything. But it's also dramatically less effective. Let's just set that aside for now. Oh, and you can see here, this is a standard Glock style captured recoil system. So let's take this apart and show you what this system looks like. And I'll do that off camera because YouTube loses their shit if they think you're building a gun and they don't really know what they're doing or looking at. So we'll have to excuse them for that. I'll be right back. So as you can see, the recoil system looks superficially very much like the standard Glock one. One difference you can see are these little feet at this end of the guide rod. These are to keep it upright. This can rotate freely and it matters not at all. You don't want this one to rotate because then the compensator will rotate. Seems simple enough. This is also not a captured system in a sense. You can see there is a polymer piece here that the spring butts up against instead of just butting up against the end of the slide. And it is a flat coil wire, or a flat wire coil spring. And then the guide rod, which is not round, passes through a shaped hole that holds everything vertically. And there is a little bit of play side to side, but it locks up against the slide and takes that out. Also, your front sight is still on the slide, so even if you were running on optic, it wouldn't matter. Then, to secure this, you place a spring in this hole, and then you put on this Allen screw, which you're supposed to Loctite in place. We didn't for shooting this video because it wouldn't have had time to cure anyway. It doesn't seem to have loosened up, though. And once you do all of that, it's mounted. And it has room to move against the spring. Significant room to move before you actually start moving the base of the guide rod. And it does scoot forward. You can see that here clearly with the screw. Now, this is a pretty large opening, so the bullet diameter does not trap a ton of gas. But you can see in still photos from the shooting that there is gas being diverted upwards. But the main party trick here is supposed to be, yes, that is a factor. But the forward movement is supposed to offset the rearward movement of the slide. And I don't know if it works exactly as they intend it to, but it very definitely does work. And it's pretty damn clever. And of course, it's very easy to, it's a Glock, it's Glock clone. It's very easy to just swap slides, which we did in the video. Now, as compensators go, this is not heavy. I don't know the exact weight, but it's made out of aluminum and it's really very light. It is enough that you can feel it in the balance of the gun, but it's not enough to really offset recoil particularly. But it's really interesting. And there is some innovation here. I mean, this is out of the box thinking for sure. Now, there are potential downsides. And we'll talk about those right now. One potential downside we've already addressed, which is holsters. Now, unless you're using this as a carry gun, that's not that big a deal. And if you're into competition enough to invest in something like this, you can probably get a competition holster that will fit it just fine. Another downside is I don't know how durable this is. It feels like that polymer washer that fits right here doesn't seem like the strongest possible option. I don't know. We're going to find out because I'm going to fire this extensively. Now, we have already put well in excess of 200 rounds through this compensator. And it's fine so far. There's no signs of any sort of wear. I'd be rather horrified if there was after only 200 rounds, frankly. Now, one advantage this has is that a big, heavy compensator, which are typically the most effective ones, which are typically mounted on the end of your barrel, they can interfere with the barrel's movement and travel, and getting them to balance out so that they work, they do their job, but still allow the gun to cycle reliably can be tricky. Now, less so on Glocks, because they've been making aftermarket comps for these for a long time, and they've gotten very good at it. And chances are, if you buy an off-the-shelf compensator, it's not going to weigh enough to interfere with the cycling of the gun. But I am really kind of impressed with both the out-of-the-box thinking, the innovation, and the fact that it really genuinely works as well as it does. You could see the difference in group sizes and the speed with which they were fired, which is exactly what it's supposed to do. So I have an X-Mantis that I could mount on this, and it would tell us exactly how much difference there is in the muzzle flip and things like that. And I may do that at some point. But where the rubber meets the roads is putting accurate shots on target fast. And it undeniably does that. So the rest is just details, how much muzzle flip and all that stuff. And in a sense, it kind of doesn't matter because it does what you want it to do. So color me impressed. We'll see if I remain impressed over the course of firing a lot of rounds through this. You know, how well it holds up and things like that. But yeah, it works. It absolutely works as advertised. And I'm not enough of a scientist to even devise an experiment to determine how much of that is from the forward movement, how much of it's from redirected gases, and how much of it is just from having weight hanging on the end of your gun. I don't know. I just know that, as I have said, it works. It does what it's supposed to, and it seems pretty reasonably priced. So, something to consider if you're the kind of shooter that can benefit from something of this nature. Now, as I said, I'm not going to put this is not a carry gun. This is actually a test gun that does double duty on my nightstand. So having a little extra weight and a little extra length on this matters not even a little. But on a carry gun, I can see that this could be a real problem. So anyway, that's my rambling, disorganized thoughts on the matter. The Strikeforce Mass Driver works as advertised, and I'm pretty impressed by that, given that it is so different. Anyway, there you have it. That's it for this time. I hope this finds you well. Stay safe, take care, and we'll talk to you again real soon.